I had met Stanley Kubrick through a mutual friend. I was in the Army at the time. Mutual friend of Stanley's was named, his name was Alex Singer, Alexander Singer, terrific fella and very talented film director as well. We were in the same unit in the Army, and Alex and I, we went to camera school together on weekends, experimenting with little short subjects. And so that's when I met Stanley. We were actually shooting in my parents' apartment in New York City, and Stanley came to watch. A year or so later, when I got out of the service, I went back into the distribution of films for television, which is the business that I was in at the time. And I ran into Stanley Kubrick in the street. And he said that since we met a year or so earlier, he had done another feature film. And this one, he was going to have a screening of it coming up. Would I like to see it? And I said, of course. So I went to a screening one evening, and I was really impressed that he had done this whole film. It turned out to be a film called Killer's Kiss. He had photographed it, he had edited, he shot it all silent with just wild track and then lip sync the whole picture. The film was not a great film, but it had a beginning, middle, and end, and he had completed it, and he had done it all himself, and I was really impressed. And he said, the film you saw last night, I just sold it to United Artists for $75,000, and they said to me that anything that I do in the future, they would love to deal with me on that. So he said, I have an open door to United Artists, but I don't really have anything planned to do. I don't really know what to do. I said, I've been kind of fed up with this distribution of films for television. I have to travel on the road, and it's a sort of an unrewarding. I mean, you can make a lot of money doing it, but I always felt I'd like to produce films. Maybe the two of us could join up, and you could direct and I could produce, and I could sort of give you a little bit more help than you've had on the last few pictures, where you wouldn't have to do everything yourself. And that I would produce, he would direct, and we'd be equal partners. The only thing was we didn't know what to do. We didn't have any particular project. So after work that night, I went to a bookstore, and I looked at these crime stories, and I came across a book called Clean Break by an author named Lionel White. It was about the robbery of a racetrack by a group of guys. And I thought, gee, this would make a terrific movie. It had a great structure about flashbacks of each participant in the robbery, what they would do up to the sort of seventh race. So I read the book that night, and I gave it to Stanley the next day. I told him I thought I found something that would be perfect for us. He read it immediately, probably in a couple of hours, and got back to me and said, yeah, this is great. The literary agent that represented the author was out in California, and I called him and said that I'd be interested in acquiring it, and he said, well, you'll have to move quickly because Frank Sinatra is interested in this book, and he's, but he hasn't been getting back to us, and he's difficult to reach, and if you send me a telegram, it's funny how in those days you use telegrams. Send me a telegram committing for $10,000 for the rights, we can make the deal, which I immediately did. I sent them a telegram, and they confirmed that I now had the rights. I had to send them $10,000. So we went running to United Artists now that we had the rights to this story, and they told us that they were doing that picture with Frank Sinatra. I said, yeah, but what you don't know is that Frank Sinatra never acquired the rights to it, and we have the rights to it. And they said, oh, well, good luck. They said, we'd be very interested in reading a screenplay if you ever get one. In other words, we had an open door at United Artists, of which they were contributing nothing. And I said, we've got that same deal at every studio and every distributor in the world is willing to take a look at a screenplay if they don't have to pay anything in front. So anyway, we decided that we needed a screenplay. And Stanley asked me if I ever heard of a writer named Jim Thompson, which I hadn't. And he educated me on the fact he wrote a book called The Killer Inside Me and several others that were really terrific. And he thought this guy was especially good at dialogue, crime figure type dialogue. And we got a hold of Jim Thompson and employed him to get together with us and work with Stanley on writing a screenplay, which we did. We changed the name from The Clean Break to Day of Violence. When we delivered it to UA, they came up with the title, The Killing. I made some contributions to the plot. You know, I remember sitting with Stanley at the Automat on Broadway and down in Times Square, and we were trying to think about what would make an effective ending. Because I think that in the book, Johnny Clay, which is the Sterling Hayden character, was actually killed in the end. You know, a real film noir type of thing. But I figured, wouldn't it be, you know, visually great and very frustrating if after all of this, through some means, the money blows away at the airport, like if maybe they put it in a suitcase that's not really very a good suitcase, and something it falls off the truck. Stanley jumped at that idea. You know, that was like a major contribution. You know, an ending is very important in a film, and I thought that would make a terrific ending. We tried so many actors that were, you know, that would fit in a low-budget film at that time. None of which anything that I contacted directly, like on the East Coast, I couldn't get anywhere. And one day I got a call from an agent representing Sterling Hayden, who said that he had read the script and liked the script very much, be interested in doing it, but he wanted to know who's going to direct this film. And I told him Stanley Kubrick, and he said, Stanley Kramer? And I said, no, it's Stanley Kubrick. And he said, well, who's Stanley Kubrick? Where did he come from? So I said, oh, he's very talented, terrific. He's done several features already. You know, they saw a good script, and it was a good part, and Sterling probably needed a job. Anyway, we went running back to United Artists, and they said, we can get Sterling Hayden. What do you say? So they said, why can't you get a bigger star? You know, we have a commitment from Victor Mature. It'll be available in 18 months. Well, we pleaded with them, and then they said, okay, we'll do it with Sterling Hayden, but we'll only give you $200,000 to do the picture. That's all. They said, now, if you don't think you can make it for two and you're going to put some money on top of that, be aware that you're going to be second on getting your money out. Our $200,000 comes back first. Any money that you put in on top of it will come back second. But we're advising you, don't waste your money. Do it for $200,000. Well, that's the decision I had to make as a producer, is that whether we're really going to have a career, if we have to make a picture for $200,000, what's it going to look like? I mean, can we actually do it so that it's professional looking and that it's going to do something for us other than bury us as incompetent filmmakers? And I decided that it would be worth whatever it's going to take to make that movie. And so I had it budgeted, and it came in, you know, at about $330,000, which meant I'd have to raise $130,000 if I wanted to do that movie, which I did. I had saved up $80,000, and I borrowed $50 from my father, and I put up the $130,000, and we went out to California and made the film for the $330,000. It was the best thing that I had ever done. The casting of The Killing was really an indication of Stanley's expertise in casting films. When I met Stanley, I was amazed to find out about how knowledgeable he was about practically every film ever made, because he sees every picture that was made. That's where he reads books and goes to the movies. And so he knows all these character actors. In those days, character actors were really terrific. I guess they're terrific today too, but they seemed so unique in those days. They made the movies, you know, the guys like Elisha Cook Jr., and they were really like the foundation that you could build a movie on, you know, underneath your major stars. The only person I think that I had come up with was Vince Edwards, you know, who played the heavy in the piece, because he was a friend of mine. But Stanley knew all of these, you know, J.C. Flippin and Joe Sawyer and Marie Windsor and Timothy Carey, Joe Turkel, Jay Adler. even the little Italian fellow that played Tony Piano, the one that he rented the room to store the gun in the suitcase. Stanley knew all of these people, so Stanley really was totally into casting. I learned a lot from him about that, and learned to start screening movies and pay attention to performances so that you could be aware of what people can do in the minor parts. Stanley had heroes and people he respected. Max Ophuls was one. The camera moves of Max Ophuls was very much of an influence on Stanley, more so than anyone that he talked about. I remember building the sets so that he could go through the rooms outside the sets, because he loved moving cameras in the beginning, going through walls, and which was great. That's what separated him from a lot of directors, is that he had great cinematic style. Having been a still photographer to start with, he had a great idea of composition. And he told, one of the lessons he told me was, he said, it's the scene that counts. It's if you've got two guys with hammers in their hand, they're going to come at each other and have a fight. He said, you can put the camera anywhere as long as you can see them, and it's going to work because of what's of interest on the screen. As long as you get a good look at what's going on, it should suffice. But, the one thing that I think I learned from Stanley was that you do not let the actors accommodate the camera. You let the camera accommodate the actors. And so, without any regard to what you're going to do as far as filming it, you stage the scene, you rehearse it and see how it plays. Then once you pin it down as to how it plays, then you can bring in your cameraman and decide how you're going to cover it. That, to me, at least preserves the naturalness of the acting, so that they're not making moves and doing things because you have a camera move in mind. I would never let the actors accommodate a camera, because it might just be at cross purposes with what the actor would really do in the scene. We got along okay with everybody, but there was a certain amount of resentment, particularly with the cameramen. Stanley had the great admiration for Lucien Ballard. He had photographed some really good films. And so we engaged Lucien to photograph The Killing. But Stanley started to be very, very specific about what he wanted from Lucien, and Lucien wasn't used to that. And Lucien was a well-established. He was married to a movie star. He dressed impeccably. Come on the set like a real typical Hollywood character. Stanley, on the other hand, was from New York. Stanley was more from Bohemian, more from the Village type presentation, and a very, I won't say know-it-all, but he knew what he wanted. And he did not get along with Lucien Ballard because of that. And I've never experienced a film again where the director of photography avoided coming to the dailies. And Lucien avoided coming to the dailies because of being disgusted with having to really follow orders from Stanley. He wanted this kind of lighting and put the key here and the thing there, and so that was unusual. The 24 days went by without much incident. The only thing that did not work out right to start with was that we came to California because we couldn't get any cooperation from any New York tracks, because we were doing a story about the robbery of a racetrack, and that is a no-no as far as cooperation from tracks. But we did find out that a track in San Francisco would cooperate. So when we got to California, we had a whole group of cameramen go up to there specifically assigned to get us footage of horse races. And when Stanley screened the footage, he was very disappointed. Particularly the film, the footage we needed for the main titles. So since Alex Singer had introduced me to Stanley, we felt obliged to include Alex in our little group of filmmakers. So we brought him with us to California, and sent him up to the track on his own. And Alex got us all of the shots that we needed for the main titles of the film, which surprised me, because when I came to Hollywood, I thought, my God, these guys are going to get us this incredible footage. And it was just routine. They got some, long lens shots of the horses going around the track and everything, but nothing that was really good stuff. But at least we were able to overcome a setback in the beginning. We felt that the structure of Clean Break that Lionel White created was really the key element of the story that interested us the most. We thought it was terrific. And then when we had a sneak preview of the finished film out in California, everybody seemed to think that would irritate the audience, and that it was foolhardy on our part to tell a story this way, that we should do it as a straight line story. And we were really disappointed that the result of the screening was so negative on this particular point. As a matter of fact, the agent for Sterling Hayden came out of the screening after it was over, the sneak preview. I think it was in Huntington Park. And he said, well, you guys really ruined it for my client. I mean, it was so disappointing. This was my first picture as a producer. So we went back to New York with the film. We went to 1600 Broadway, which is a big film building, rented a editing room, and broke down the film and tried to tell it as a straight line story. When we finished it, or got halfway, I don't know where we were, we looked at each other and we said, are we crazy? I mean, the whole idea, why we bought the book, why we made the movie, why it intrigued us so that we think it was such a terrific, good crime film, was because of the unique way of telling the story. What are we doing here? And we just put it back the way it was and said, this is it. Live or die with it. We love it. Let's deliver it to United Artists and see what happens. And so we put it back the way that we had originally edited. And, we had turned it into United Artists, taken it back to Hollywood to screen around. But the film was still laying with United Artists, and no release date has been set for it. So we were yet to find out whether it's going to be successful, unsuccessful, well-reviewed, or panned, or whatever. And we got a call from United Artists that a film that they had opened at some big barn, a big theater on Broadway, had failed. And they're going to pull the picture, and they want to put The Killing in there as a replacement, which we knew was death, that the picture needed a special campaign. It should play in a small theater, it should build. So the film opened, and it opened and closed so fast it formed a suction. They had to put speed bumps in the aisles in order to keep the people from walking out too fast. It was, but the only thing was it got terrific reviews, particularly in Time magazine. And Time magazine listed it as current favorites. And so now when one is asked about, did you reap some rewards from this picture once it got around? Yeah, maybe not at the box office, but this one picture, The Killing, actually got us a lot of heat for our careers. So producing is a key role in paving the way for Kubrick to do a lot of the things that he did. I was able to acquire the rights to Clean Break for The Killing, for Paths of Glory, and for Lolita. After we had done Lolita, I think Stanley was well on his way. The only thing was that I had this burning desire to direct, which I blame Stanley for. He encouraged it. He impressed me to the extent where you wanted to do it too. It looked the way he was doing it, so easy. And that finally reached the point after Lolita that I had to do it. And Stanley and I got together, and I remember the speech he made about, this is a lonely business, and he said, it's much better to be together. He said, we share the disappointments, and we share the successes. And he says, but I do think that we can individually make decent films, make good films. But he said, there's nothing like the feeling you get when you're directing a picture and you look at those dailies and you say, you did that. It was your staging and your directing the performances that's up there, that what you're looking at now. You don't get that as a producer like you do as a director. And he said, you'll see. He said, I think you're going to be better than most of the guys out in California. based upon the contributions that I had made. And so it's with his blessings that sent me on my way to become a director. And we were always friends. We always stayed in touch. He counseled with me a lot when I did my first picture as a director of the Bedford incident. I would call him from London because I did that there, and he was in New York writing with Arthur Clarke on 2001. And he would give me pointers and how to deal with a lot of the problems that I was facing. So I can only remember it as a great partnership, and I'm thankful for the 7 or 8 years we had together. It's great.